independent of who the other person is. That's the whole thing. We could do a whole nother show about that topic as well.
Yes, how we project on other people our old stuff. Oh, that would be a
Ooh,
really good subject.
show, so yes. So to say
I
for next
would
time.
like that a lot. But today we're talking
Mhm.
about something else.
Yes,
So
we are.
let's talk about dating with Barry and Christine. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Christine.
So today we're talking about, are you lonely or alone? And you and I were talking about people don't always know that there's a huge difference. There couldn't be a bigger difference between these two words. Even though they look really similar and people think they're really similar, they couldn't be more farther apart.
Right.
And this has a
True.
lot to do with how secure you feel as a person. Boy, isn't that a foundation for this topic?
That's probably the biggest piece of work for most people, frankly.
Mhm.
You know, so
Because alone in this instance means you're not partnered up with somebody. You're not in a relationship, you're not in a loving, committed relationship with another adult. That's what people are thinking is alone. And in this context it is. I mean, you have lots of friends and you have lots of things going on in your life, but if you want to be partnered up and you're not, then that's the lonely. That's the
right.
alone. The lonely, I think, and I would love to hear your definition because I know you'll have a really good one, is when
Just
you're feeling lesser than, that there's pieces missing from you because you're not partnered up. You don't have a full life. You haven't grown yourself up. You haven't matured yourself in a way that being alone, you're not lonely. And you and I both talked about that we are not partnered up currently. We're actively out there looking because we like our lives when we've been partnered up in the past, but we are never lonely. We're never lonely. We're never bored. Life
right.
feels pretty darn good. It would
Yeah.
just be a next level up if we were in partnered with somebody. So you talk about how you have the difference, what you think about alone and lonely, sir.
Well, thank you. So I feel special when you say that.
I know.
I mean, frankly, what I'm going to say is almost going to replete, in a way, underscore what you've said. So it's not that different, really. The thing is, for me, yes, people do tend to conflate lonely with being alone. So when they're not with somebody, they feel like they have to be lonely, which is a mistaken approach because alone is a state of being. Lonely is an emotional reaction.
Yep.
And so loneliness comes under the heading of this thing about codependency type of thing, which we've talked about many times as well, is we feel like we're incomplete without somebody else in our lives. You know, that loneliness is a sense of just need somebody to make us feel okay.
Yeah.
And being needs driven isn't healthy.
No.
Unless it's need for shelter, need for water, need for food, that sort of thing. But need for a relationship, not the same level. And being alone, frankly, I've come to firmly believe this, that when you really find out how to be alone in a healthy way,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the best place to be in a relationship because you're not coming from a place of desperation or need or hunger. Yes, you can have like fun games in a relationship where you get hungry for sex from the other person. That's a game to play. But when
Yeah.
you're desperately seeking someone else to fill you up, meaning they are responsible for you to feel okay, that's the codependent trap. So loneliness has a lot of downsides and very few upsides. Whereas being alone is a healthy state of being because, frankly, to be an individual, to be a whole person, that's the same as being alone, is a healthy ownership of who you are. And we can talk a
Mm-hmm.
lot about what goes into that. But frankly,
Mm-hmm.
those two different perspectives really define for me, the stark difference between the two.
I really agree. And one of the analogies I thought of when we were talking about doing the subject this week is you never go grocery shopping when you're starving hungry because you are not going to buy the best things. You're going to
Right.
buy those chips and the chocolate. And it's not that you can't have some of that, but you need to buy the substantial, nourishing, all the food groups that we grew up learning about. Because when your body's satisfied and has all the food, if I stay with the grocery store, then you're like, oh yeah, I could buy a bag of chips rather than, oh, I have to have this bag of chips, even if it's not going to be nourishing to me. And that's
Right.
what happens when we get desperate when we're lonely is we will settle for anybody's attention. We won't do any filtering. We won't do any assessing to see, is this really the right person for us? Are they going to really enhance our lives or make us feel? And the thing that happens is you often feel even more lonely when you've picked the wrong person.
Yeah. In fact, it's almost like any warm body will do in a sense.
Oh, sad. If you're
Yeah.
doing it for the reason that you feel lonely, not like if you said, you want a friends with benefits, you just want to hook up with somebody. Okay, be really clear about that. As long as the rest of your life is fulfilling and whole, then you're not going to get attached to this person that's probably not the right person to think about something future with, that this is just a fun night, that you're both consenting adults. Okay, have at it. But that takes a really secure place for somebody to be in. And that's somebody who's really comfortable being alone.
Right. In fact, we said secure, it just made me think about attachment styles, because that comes into play in a way. Because when you are comfortable being yourself, you are a very secure attachment style, which is what really comes back to owning a space. So yes, if you want to have friends with benefits or something that's more light-hearted, it's from the place of just simply enjoying it, but you don't have it from the place of either one, being scared that you might lose it, or two, which is the is the anxious style, or two, that you're doing it because you don't dare go much more than that, because that's the avoidance style.
Yeah.
So the truth is that finding that middle ground where you're insecure, so you get to dance in that area for fun, for enjoyment, and you don't feel like there's anything that's going to knock you off center, so to speak. That who you are, you're stable in yourself, and you're comfortable with who you are.
Yeah.
And so that inbuilt ownership, which is what being alone supports, is the best way to approach. And again, when you are alone, you're in the best place, I suggest, to actually meet somebody, because then when you meet somebody, it's kind of like, oh, they're nice. Let's get to know them and see if it goes somewhere. Oh, it's getting exciting. It's fun. But along the way, there's no like, what if they say no? Or what happens this? And I'm scared, or I'm nervous. That's not what being alone is about. That's the lonely part. Speaking out that's desperate for comfort, for connection, for intimacy.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, because the first energy around just meeting somebody is pretty heightened. Oh, they're interesting, and wow, I've never had that kind of conversation before, and wow, I really like it when I'm with them, and I look forward to being with them again. And how do you determine that this is because they're enhancing your life, or it's because you're lonely and you feel like there's somebody going to fill up that empty hole that you have inside of you? And that would be so important, I think, for us to go into little depth on that, because I don't know if everybody would recognize that difference.
I mean, it's funny because for me, and I think for you too, we've done enough work where we know the difference very clearly. It's very clearly delineated. It's like, oh, it's this again.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that some people don't have a clue that's what they're actually living in 99% of the time, which is why they don't know anything different. It's like they've gotten used to being lonely. And so they almost feel like that's natural and normal to be that way, when I personally would say that it's not healthy. It may be normal, but it's not healthy.
Yeah.
So
good distinction. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can talk about this definitely to explain what the detriments of that are, so people can say, oh, maybe I don't want to choose that going forward. Still
or
being,
wow, I recognize myself when you say that.
right.
Oh, I didn't realize that was what I was doing.
Yeah.
So your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual well-being, how full are you on your own in all those categories? Do you do some things to exercise? Do you nourish yourself with food? Do you make sure that you sleep? Do you have outside activities that get you out and get you around other people, to make sure that you're filling up? If we go back to John Gray's 10 love tanks, that you think of all those tanks that have the 5 that have to get filled before you get to the 6th one, that's a romantic relationship, that you have other things in your life that make you feel worthwhile, that make you feel whole, that make you happy. And so often people are really put all that on hold. I'm going to exercise when I meet somebody. Oh, I got a dog because I'm lonely, not because we'll enhance each other's life. And well, that'll be good. It'll get me out to exercise and I'll go to a dog park and meet other people. They do it because they're feeling so desperate and lonely. So I guess I'd rather them pick a dog than the wrong people relationship, but it still isn't necessarily you coming from the right place. Because what I found when people do it that way, they pick a dog, they're like, oh my God, I got a terrier. Did you know how much energy they have? I'd know that before I got a terrier.
Yeah.
Or this big dog. Oh my God, I didn't know this dog puppy was going to get this big, because you're desperate. So if you even just look in the puppy realm, desperate is not making a good decision at the grocery store and puppies and people.
Or
Who
anything
like
else.
to put that together? Anything.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The thing that comes for me comes back to is what are you driven by? You know, being driven by that need for something, whether it's love or affection, choosing a furry critter versus a human person, it is not healthy either way. And the thing is that really comes back to is your relationship with yourself. And for most people, because we've been raised in a culture and an environment, and probably by family members that are focused on externalization of our feelings and externalization of our fulfillment and needs, that we don't actually learn how to fill up ourselves from inside first. And talk about the love, the love tanks or batteries, from John Gray. That's the thing, is that we keep thinking that when I have that relationship, then these will get filled up, which is a backwards approach. I mean, it's funny because there's the story about exercise and fitness, that there are people who basically will exercise fully and get really committed until they meet the person, then they'll stop doing it.
Yes.
Then the other people say, when I meet the person, then I'll start exercising.
Yes.
Neither one really makes sense.
No.
Because problem is you're doing it for somebody else. Either way, I've been starting to really, one, because of the pandemic and sourdough bread, but it's that I choose to get exercise every single morning, and I've done it 500 days in a row, something like that now. And yeah, I'm not going to the gym and like pushing heavy weights to become muscular, but I'm taking care of myself. And frankly, it's for me. And yes, if I meet somebody, they'll benefit too, but that's bonus, not the requirement. Because the thing is, and that's the thing also, talking about this thing about the imbalance type thing, is when you meet somebody, we were talking actually in the pre-show in the waiting room, talking about this thing about when you're comparing with other people. When you meet somebody who's fitter than you are, maybe they go to the gym all the time, or they go run on the beach and all these things they do. How do you feel about that? Because that also become a block to actual connection. I know we're going a different path for a second, but just the idea that we keep looking at the comparison with somebody outside of ourselves for fulfillment. Again, that externalization need for finding someone who looks better or acts better or does something differently, we think we're lacking somehow. And that's the trap again that puts you in a place of loneliness. And it's such I'd say it's so simple but not easy to start to learn how to be comfortable being in your own body, to enjoy your own company and be alone in a healthy way. Because the loneliness piece is driven oftentimes because we haven't looked in the mirror and discovered that we're okay as a person.
Yes.
And there's so much to unpack there. So I'll give it back to you for a second.
Oh no, it was so many good points. And I think truly one of the points that you touched on is, I think one of the big indicators that you're feeling lonely is when in some one or a bunch of areas, you don't feel enough, smart enough, skinny enough, tall enough, nice enough, whatever, something enough. That's when you're going to feel lonely, because you don't even feel like you're your best friend. You don't feel like you're in your corner. If you don't feel good enough in all those ways, then I think I would feel lonely if I didn't feel like I was my best self for me, much less another person.
Yeah.
So to look at what's the critical thing that you say to yourself, that you need to lose weight, gain weight, do more outside stuff, take up a sport, get off the couch, eat better, whatever it is, whatever that is, it's getting in the way of you feeling secure, comfortable being alone. Because if you were comfortable being alone, you wouldn't be yakking at yourself. And then it's going to get you in a place where you're going to be this whole person going out and looking for another whole person. Because that's what I found when I got married the first time. We were very clearly not whole people. Both of us had these really big holes in it and thought, oh, I'll just meet this other person and get married and they'll fill in my holes. It was so obvious we remained half people while we were married. It didn't turn into a whole. We were these separate half people that are lacking places inside of us. Instead of Because you can have places where, wow, that person is really into current events and you're not, but you're interested and you want to hear them, and you don't feel inadequate about it.
Mhm.
But we both felt so inadequate in we kept pricking on bumping into each other's sharp edges. Instead of it being this nice symbiotic complementary thing, we kept crashing into each other and hurting each other over our inadequate feelings,
Right.
which was so sad. It's so sad. So looking inside, what are the things that you're critical about, and figuring out, well, what could I do differently about that? What's the thing that I could do for me
Mm-hmm.
so that I'm going to feel better about this thing that I feel less? So go read about current events so you could talk about them more, or go walking, or go find out more about dog breeds before you buy one. You know,
Absolutely.
if
Yeah.
you don't feel good at something, oh, please, the goddess Google knows everything. If you ask her a question, she will tell you where to go find the answer.
The goddess Google, I love it.
And that's what I call her, because she does know everything.
Sometimes more than we want to know.
That's true. And it's such a rabbit hole to go down. Oh my God, you could lose a whole hour sometimes.
Absolutely. So a couple of things that I want to speak back to.
Yeah.
In my book, I talk about this. We talked about the books last week. I talk about relationships on 50-50, 100-100, which means that each partner needs to be 100% themselves, whole and complete. Because somebody was coming to a relationship thinking that we'll find our other half, that they'll complete me. All those, taglines from movies that we quote all the time, which again is the symptoms or the indicators of codependency. So coming from a place of loneliness, being incomplete, I say it's a trap, but it's also habitual and it's normal in the sense it's normalized by our culture. So what we're actually talking about here is stepping outside the norm to become comfortable being in your own skin. And it's not from a place of ego. It's another difference, by the way. It's about being wholehearted.
Yes.
So a couple of things I want to drop in. One of which is that when we are running around pretending that we're not complete, because it's pretense, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
So keep looking for some, like you were saying, like that we have a hole the other person's going to fill somehow. They're going to make us feel complete. They're going to fill in our gaps, or they're going to smooth over those rough edges we think we have. Well, that may happen, but it's not about them fixing anything in you anyway. Because whatever gaps, holes, rough edges you have, that's part of who you are, so to speak. But also, if you want to do something about them, it's not wait for somebody else to do it for you. Do it yourself. So if you feel like you're not in shape and you feel like you want to be better, don't wait for the other person to show up in your life to get you motivated. Motivate yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do something where you want to sort out, that when you get somebody or sort out your finances, do that before.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if the person doesn't show up, you'll be in better shape in your life. Those different things you work on, like health, fitness, your own relationship skills with yourself and other people. Watching videos like ours, getting support coaching from somebody who's a coach like one of us, or just to go online and do research and, goddess Google, to check out different things to discover what would help you become more whole and more complete, is what gives you back to yourself. Because we've been trained, I would suggest, by most of our culture that, most of the ad marketing for the last, I don't know how many decades, has been telling us that we'll be okay when we have this thing, this product, this result, this device that they're selling us. So selling and marketing in the commercial world, the retail world, is 90% of the time is selling to promote that we're lacking something until we get what they're selling.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been trained by our society to think we aren't complete. And we're offering an alternative that we are complete. We just have to remember that it's okay to be on our own and be complete. That our wholeness, our alone beingness is healthy and is actually something to be desired and focused on.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And I love that you use wholehearted, because if you look at the places in your heart that are feeling sad or lonely or not enough, which is really normal, those are very human reactions to lots of how we were raised. I mean, oh my gosh. I said the only way I was having kids is if they popped out with a manual that fit that kid, because nobody knows how to raise kids. I mean, the people that do a good job, I am so admiring of them, because most people did the best job they could, which is, we talked about our parents did the best job they could. But there were places where we felt we had holes, and they kept showing up loud and clear in our previous relationships until we went, I think I want to do this differently. How do I figure out how to do this differently? And so figuring out where those holes are, what are the things that you're feeling less than, inadequate, not enough, and then get some coaching help to come up with tools about, well, go do this, go do this kind of inside work with us, do this kind of writing. Then you get to go outside and practice it. And you'll be amazed when your heart starts feeling full and whole because of something you've done, not you're getting it from the outside person. Even if you go participate in a group, it's still you participating in the group. It's you giving to them, you getting back from them. It's not the people. It's not the group. It's like they're a catalyst for the work that you're doing on yourself. But so many people they go to those kind of groups and then they're all disappointed because it didn't fix it, because they forgot they needed to be proactive about it, right? It wasn't all about just the group.
Yep, absolutely. No, how can I say this? We're so caught up in the paradigm of that when we get fixed, we'll be okay. That when this thing happens, that thing happens, something again, externally referenced, when we are still caught up in the paradigm of being externally referenced. And our parents didn't know any better either. Usually, most parents didn't. Again, coming with user manuals. If only it was that easy.
Yeah.
So they do the best we think we did the best they could with what they knew how to do, which may not have been that good, but it was the best they knew how to do. Yeah. So we're working with an imperfect starting point, but it's not the end of the game when we realize there's more to do. But I know we're going to take a break, so we'll talk about more about this when we come back.
Yes, we'll be right back after these wonderful commercials.
Yes.
So we're back. Whoa.
Yes, we are.
Do you hear it echo?
No, I'm okay. You hear an echo?
Only when I talk. Oh no, there it's there. Oh well, I'll just ignore it. Oh, now
Okay.
it's gone. So we're
Okay.
talking about are you lonely or alone, and the big differences about that, and what to do about making yourself not feel lonely so that you can feel comfortable about being alone and not desperate to try to fill up your life with things that probably aren't the best for you, because that's what we do when we're lonely. It's a
Or
hunger.
let's say, or fill up with the people that aren't the best for you either. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, recap? No, let's move forward. So
Well, it was such
clues.
a good point you were making. Yeah.
Well, let me say this way: that there are so many clues and signs that we have, if we choose to look more clearly at what we're saying, what we're thinking, and how we're acting, that will inform ourselves whether maybe we need to realign back to our values and ourselves. You know, if we're externally referenced so much, we tend to be like hanging on everybody else's word almost, where we're so invested in other people versus ourselves. That's another trap, by the way. We don't actually value who's in the mirror, and the I'll say the excuse is not the right word, but certainly the methodology we get into, the ways we do things, that will exacerbate that loneliness, never fill us up. Joining circles of certain people to make us feel better, inaccurate approach. Joining circles because you want to have fun and do things, that's healthy. But it's this thing about what drives us to do things. So oftentimes the difference between lonely and being alone, the same choices, same actions happen, but where it comes from is very different. And so it's the inner work and this inner focus that comes up. And so I think we should definitely want to talk about how to really come back to, or I should say, honor being alone in a healthy way. Because I want to give our audience members some clues, signposts, and steps they can take on their own if they're not already doing it, so they can feel comfortable, confident, and trusting in who they are as a person. Because again, once you're more whole that way, attracting relationships is a whole lot easier because it becomes a whole lot less necessary, not necessarily needy. It becomes something you enjoy going into. So yeah, so that's just a little thought I want to drop there.
Oh, just one little tiny
Yeah.
thought. And really, regarding the dating world, the the men and women that get taken advantage of by scammers
Oh yeah.
are the ones that are very lonely and very desperate. Because I remember there was a book written that was called that said, if you don't believe in something, you'll fall for anything.
Hmm.
So I think what we're talking about is believing in yourself,
Yeah.
believing in your value, your worthiness, that you don't need somebody to make you feel valuable. You don't need somebody to make you feel worthwhile, which will keep you in a space where you can say, well, yeah, thank you for the flattering, but let me see if you're a real person. Are you a substantial person? Are you really everything you're saying you are? I won't get caught up in the excitement of, gosh, somebody's really thinks I'm pretty and I'm not sure I think I'm pretty. If you already think you're pretty or handsome or smart or a good catch, and for all those reasons, it'll be nice that they'll say compliments, but you won't feel like you're starving and somebody's dangling this bag of chips in front of you. And I think that
Exactly.
that's really important in the dating world, because it's the people that get taken advantage of the most by the people who know how to take advantage of you.
Oh yeah. And the thing is also just another piece of that, because there are people out there who, yeah, the scamming of the victims, so to speak, is definitely prevalent. And people who feel lonely tend to feel sometimes that they're a victim because they don't feel like they're in control.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about being alone, again, healthy aloneness, first of all, you don't become the victim because you're not needing anything else to make you feel okay, which is healthy. Second thing is, it's not about being egotistical, because some people think, well, if I'm going to be like individual and not care about everybody else, I'm going to be selfish. It's like, no, it's not talking about that, being egotistical. Being alone is enjoying who you are. And yes, it makes you more magnanimous and magnetic and available to do other things. So you do get to socialize, be around other people. But the thing is that when you do that, it's like you can walk away from circumstances that don't match you. I said I've been doing a lot of work over the years to feel really comfortable being in my own skin and enjoy who I am, enjoy what I'm doing. What I'm discovering is that I don't say yes to everything as much as I used to. That was the other part. is that I'd always been needing to go to every social engagement, every party, every gathering I'd say yes to, so I didn't feel as lonely. Anybody resonate with that? I wonder in the audience.
Maybe.
Yeah, and so what I've really become clear about is that I enjoy. I mean, I take myself to movies on my own. I've done it quite a lot for a lot the last few years. I enjoy it because one thing is I can go anytime I want, and to schedule somebody else. And secondly, I won't get disturbed by myself sitting next to me and talk to me all the time. So from a selfish point of view, going to see movies on my own is something I enjoy. I do go with friends too. But the thing that comes back to is that when you are comfortable being in your own skin, you enjoy being yourself. Going out with socially other people, going out socially on your own, it works both ways. But when you're lonely or driven by that fear of being lonely, you can only go out with other people. It's almost like a fear of going out on your own. Now, I need to qualify something here, because some people are introverts, naturally speaking, may not want to go out all the time on their own too. I'm not saying you must go out on your own, but definitely if you're, I mean, I'm more of an ambivert than an extrovert or introvert, sort of in between. So I enjoy going with other people. But what I really want to make sure people get is that when you do enjoy your own company, staying at home, going out is all fine. And you do it and the key is that you do it to honor what feels comfortable to you as well. If you're an introvert, going out all the time doesn't work for you, understandably. If you're an extrovert, staying home all the time doesn't work for you. It's like you got to find what matches for your values and get to know who you are. So this journey of self-discovery, which is, frankly, could be a whole lifetime, can be a whole lot of fun if you really take it on as a joyful thing, which being alone is kind of contributing to really honoring the journey you have with yourself.
Yep. Wow. There were 2 points that I wanted to emphasize about that. Figuring out why you're doing what you're doing. Why are you staying home? And why are you going out? What's the motivation? And how are you going to feel your best, whichever thing you're choosing? Because you're choosing it because it's what feels best to you. I think that would be one of the very first steps that people would do when they're thinking, well, gosh, I do go out all the time, but I like the company of people because I'm this raging extrovert. Okay, so it's not that you're lonely. You're happy with your company and you're happy being at home now and then. But if you really are a people-y person, then that's why you're going. Then good for you. And if you really are an introvert and that's the way you charge your batteries, but that you still have time you go with people, that just smaller groups and people that are more, you feel closer to, you can have more deep conversations with. But don't just blithely, unconsciously do stuff, constantly assessing. The other thing where people sometimes say, well, I'm so content being alone, I don't want a relationship, or I don't need a relationship. Well, that could be so, but when they're doing it with that kind of an attitude, I'm not sure they really mean it. I'm not sure they're coming from a wholehearted place, right?
That's the key, right? That's the thing. Is, I mean, there are the other side of this puzzle where people want to be alone because they're scared of being in a relationship. There's a whole different conversation. They're afraid of what might happen.
I wanted to at least bring it up because I think it's a really good point. Because they're like, well, I'm fine being a home alone. Well, but let's look at why.
If you're fine being home alone because you're scared to go out, or you are afraid of meeting somebody because of the past pain you haven't healed yet, happens. That isn't what's being healthy. Being alone, you know, that's almost the avoidant attachment style away, because it's tying you into a sense of, I don't want to deal with that, like, stay away from me type stuff, which is not really going to be effective.
No.
So being alone as a healthy way, as I mentioned earlier, which you're talking about too, is getting out and having fun, doing things that you enjoy, but enjoying being yourself in that experience versus being an energy vampire, sucking on other people's vitality, which some people do when they're lonely. Not healthy. So that's being a healthy alone, not being an avoidant, like, I don't want to be around anybody else because it's too scary. That's not healthy alone.
So another part of just being more conscious, ask yourself, how do I feel about being home? How do I feel about going out? How do I feel about the people I'm spending time with? If I don't feel good about it, then what's an alternative? What's another option that I could go try something else? I could try a different group of people. I could try having people to my house. I could try doing a different activity. Maybe I don't like going out for dinner. I'd rather go for a walk with people. or I'd rather do a craft with people, or I'd rather join a book club because then I'm by myself while I'm reading, but then I'm interacting with people when we talk about the book. And when I've suggested these for clients, they're like, oh, I never thought about it like that. And so seek your level, because what we're seeing is it's not a one size fits all, but to really see the difference between these two words, lonely and alone, and where are you on the spectrum, and how we all could probably improve a little. And the other thing that happens, I've learned, when you get, you're got together and you're feeling all wholehearted and you go out and you meet somebody and you get in a relationship, trust me, stuff's going to come up. You'll still have stuff come up. It's just the way relationships are. We're constantly learning about ourselves and each other. So trust me, you'll still have stuff to learn. But getting yourself in this wholehearted place before you get in a relationship, when that other stuff comes up, it's going to make it much easier to handle it. You don't end up with these gargantuan blow-ups. You don't end up with this gargantuan misunderstanding where people are, get separated. It's so amazing how if you come with this, I'm okay, I'm a cool person, I can handle stuff when it comes up, and you get in a relationship with somebody who feels the same way, then when shit comes up, because it does, you're both like, oh, there's that thing. Oh my gosh, I'm so comfortable with you. My shit's coming up and I'm going to own it's my shit. And let's talk about it, or get somebody to help us talk about it. I mean, that's a really positive way to look at it. But it's only because you've done the work ahead of time and you've met somebody that's done the work ahead of time.
Well, it's a sense, it's almost like, because I mean, I'm going to out both of us this way. We still have stuff in relationship too, because we're human. We're still working on our stuff. We know more things, which is great, which is something we talked about earlier before the show. But the understanding also is that to be self-aware enough, which is what this work's really about, so that when stuff shows up, they go, oh, that isn't them, that's my stuff. Let me figure that one out. I spent many relationships where I basically think it was all their fault that things went wrong, not mine. I didn't take ownership of my part in that relationship. So that enmeshment and that lonely sort of thing was basically that feeling a hole when the other person was around, only because at that point I feel like there's I can feel okay, but being comfortable being in my skin, again, owning my aloneness, being comfortable in who I am and enjoying myself when I'm around other people. If stuff shows up, first of all, I don't make their lives miserable by thinking it's their fault. Yes. But secondly, I get to go, great, something I get to work on. And yes, I can say it as great because I've worked in enough stuff to realize that every time I work on something, the other side of it is so much healthier and happier than it was before. So of course it's going to be great if someone showed up, because it's like I'm going to be better off afterwards. So it's worth going through.
I really am me, we both talked about the stuff that we've got, personal work we've done and the work we do with our clients, that you think, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea, I could work on that. And then you're in the middle, like, whose idea was this? They should be shot. This is hard. It's awful. I can't believe I'm doing this. And then you get to their side and like, well, that was really worth it. Okay. And then it all happens again. You're like, oh, that's a good idea. In the middle, you're like, no, it's going to be different this time. I'm going to fall, then I'm never going to get back up again. And then you get through and you're like, oh, that was good. So there's going to always be stuff. It's just, what tools are you going to have that you've already honed and practiced with yourself? Because it's so empowering to go, oh, it is my stuff. I can do something about that. And I'm going to be even stronger, but feel even more enough when I get through my stuff. And boy, if you have somebody in your life that's done some work, that they know what this work is about, that they're like, oh, yeah, I get that you're saying it's your stuff, and what can I do to support you through this? And isn't that the best?
That is a miracle, frankly.
It's what we're both looking for, the unicorns, right?
Well, we are unicorns. That's the joy of this ultimately. You're right.
I just had like a tickle or something. It was weird.
Yeah. So I know we keep hammering this point home, but it's the key. That really becoming self-aware and becoming comfortable in ourselves, in doing the work we do, whether it's with a coach, with reading, or with doing what we do, is so that we have a healthy relationship with ourselves, so being alone is comfortable and confident. And then the attachment to somebody else to make us feel okay goes away. The
Yes.
attachment to needing somebody else to feel unlonely is no longer relevant.
No.
There's freedom in this way because, again, we get to choose from a much healthier place, and our relationships become additive to our life versus filling some void we think we carry around. And hopefully, the other person has the same feeling as well.
Yeah.
So, this is big stuff we're talking about here, which can be life changing. It's probably one of the biggest components of how to be ready for a relationship that we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't think about it. So,
No.
hopefully, this conversation we've been having has been nudging some people to think differently about themselves, and maybe inspire them to do some their own inner journey, their own inner work, to have a healthier relationship with themselves first, because that's always the best way to prepare for any relationship.
Yeah. And it'll make you a better partner for yourself as well
Yes.
as the other person.
Yep.
Because how good can you feel about yourself if you're running around feeling inadequate all the time?
Right.
And then
It's,
being around other people can exacerbate the inadequate part. That there's things I don't know very much about, and I'm like, great, bring it on. I want to hear. I want to learn about it because I know the things that I know that I can share. So it helps me not feel lesser than around people who know more stuff than I do, because I know I have my stuff that I know. So when you get past the lonely place, when you're really comfortable being alone and really comfortable with yourself, you will then start attracting people that feel that way too. Because I find that, boy, when you feel lonely, those lonely people show up in droves like little magnets.
indeed, they do. The other part also about this as well is that, I mean, frankly, it comes back to the being alone and having done the work, is they're also not thinking we're perfect. There's a sense of humility as well that comes with that, because we just know it's like we got stuff to work on, same as anybody else does. Just that we have first of all, we have a better toolkit to work with to start with, and two, we've been through enough of this before. Like you were saying before, it's great to go into it, sucks in the middle, but great to be on the other side of it. We've done that loop enough times that we're willing to jump in any time because we know there's value in it,
Mhm.
which for many people is news to them.
And pretty scary.
Yeah,
Which is why
understandably.
you and I talk about how we're happy to help people do the practice so that they can put themselves out there and then they can help other people. Because if you're being your whole self and being transparent and, oh gosh, there I was doing my stuff again, then it can give the other person permission to go, oh, I guess I have stuff too. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Oh, one other thing I want to add on, because I forgot about this earlier. There are a lot of people actually who are in a relationship who are lonely. Make sure they get to land, because that point is because there are people who basically, because again, if you're in a place that's driven by loneliness, because the place of being incomplete, when you find somebody that make you feel whole, that's great. But over a period of time, that connection can fade. So you're in the relationship, but you feel lonely again. So again, being alone is a much healthier place to be, and actually the best place to be versus being lonely, because being lonely tends to be a very it's a loop. You can't come back to the place of being left out. So do the work. It's worth it, because when you do get to the other side, you'll feel so much more relieved and more whole. Although you're whole all the time, it's just you'll remember it more easily.
That is such an important point. And I'm so glad you brought it up because I would have remembered it an hour from now. How lonely it is to be in the wrong relationship.
Absolutely.
So when you do the things that we've talked about and learn even more tools that we can share with you, because this is such the tip of the iceberg of this very, very important subject that can have impact in all areas of your life, your social life, your business life, as well as your romantic life. I mean, it's just permeates everywhere.
Absolutely.
So if you'd like to get help understanding this better, and if you are thinking, wow, I do have some of those lonely things about me, and I'd like to get more comfortable being my alone self, the way to get a hold of me is to go to my website, which is www.theperfectcatch.com. Click on what's holding you back from love, and then we can have a personal, free, complimentary conversation about what it is that's holding you back, because lonely is definitely going to hold you back from finding a satisfying, happy relationship. You can also send me an email at christine@theperfectcatch.com. And you can see me on all the social medias of Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Pinterest and YouTube and Instagram.
Nice, Lita. That's
Yes,
pretty
I've
good.
been practicing, Barry. Thank you. Even though I know you've got my back when I forget something.
Always there for you. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
tell people how they can find you, Barry.
Sure. So, like Christine, I have a website, which is my site is barryselby.com. On the front page of there at the top, you can click on Take the First Step if you want to set up a conversation with me, same complimentary conversation, where we can talk and discuss where you are, what you're looking for, and if I can help you and if that fits. You can also email at barryselby.com. To make things easier, apart from Instagram, all my social media is Barry Selby, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Clubhouse, because I'm on Clubhouse. There's one other one that came through. Will come back to me or not. And then Instagram is the real Barry Selby. That's the only one that's different. So check out my stuff, and
Yes.
definitely if you want some support, get in touch with either one of us because we can help you definitely navigate this path to where you want to go. That's our gift and our strength.
We have stuff. Don't you
Yeah.
feel, I mean, I really am going to say this out loud because I've said it to people. I said, I feel like they're gifts that God gave us, and it's really our job to use them.
It's frankly, well, I talk about it as the lessons I had to go through, then pass on to others so they have to go through the same ones I did. But yeah, same idea.
I think you put stuff in our path, or she, or whoever in the heck it is.
Yes.
So please come join us next Thursday. We'll be here at 1 o'clock Pacific and 4 o'clock Eastern and all the times in between with another informative, interesting, important conversation about dating and relationships.
That's what we're looking forward to. We'll see you then.
Always. Bye for now.